"Ma'am, step aside." The words sliced through the air like a blade. Naomi Carter froze mid-step, her boarding pass still warm in her hand. Around her, travelers streamed toward the departure gates, but in that moment all the motion, all the noise, blurred into a dull hum. The voice belonged to a man in a crisp TSA uniform, a man who had barely glanced at the white passengers ahead of her, waving them through without so much as a second look. But now, staring at her, his eyes narrowed as if he'd spotted trouble. Naomi had felt this before, that silent, heavy accusation that came before the questions, before the search. It didn't matter that her shoes were polished, her dark navy blazer pressed, or that the FBI badge clipped to her belt gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. He hadn't seen the badge yet. All he saw was a black woman. The line behind her slowed, people craning their necks to see. A middle-aged woman clutched her purse tighter. A man in a business suit stepped sideways as if avoiding contamination. Naomi's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "Is there a problem, officer?" He didn't answer at first. Instead, his gaze swept over her body like a scanner looking for flaws. Then he said, flat and loud enough for others to hear, "Random screening. Step over here." Naomi had been in enough airports to know that random wasn't always random. And the way he stressed, "Step over here," felt like a command meant for someone beneath him, not a traveler with a first-class ticket and federal clearance. A second TSA officer, a younger woman with a blonde bun pulled tight, joined him. Without greeting Naomi, she reached for Naomi's carry-on. "We're going to have to check your bag," the woman said. "Of course," Naomi replied, keeping her voice even, but inside something burned. That bag had already gone through the X-ray scanner, twice. She had seen it glide down the conveyor belt with nothing suspicious inside. But they were still pulling her aside. Still searching. The male officer unzipped it slowly, almost theatrically, pulling out each item. Her laptop, her folders, her neatly folded blouse for the meeting ahead. And then, he held up a small black pouch. "What's in here?" His tone dripped with suspicion. Naomi swallowed. She knew exactly what was in that pouch. Her service weapon. Issued by the FBI. She glanced at him. His smug confidence told her everything she needed to know. He thought he had her. He thought this was the moment he could drag her to some back room, make an example out of her. He didn't know who she was. Not yet. And part of her wanted to let him walk right into his own trap. But before she could speak, another voice broke in. "Markson, what's going on here?" A sharp, authoritative tone. Naomi turned her head and saw the airport director himself, James Ortiz, striding toward them, suit crisp, eyes locked on the scene. Airport Director James Ortiz's voice cut through the air like a bell. The crowd's murmurs died instantly, but the male TSA officer, his name tag reading Markson, didn't look rattled. If anything, his smirk deepened. "Director," Markson greeted with forced politeness, "just doing a random security check. This passenger was carrying an unmarked pouch." His eyes darted at Naomi as if to say, "See? I've got you." Naomi kept her posture still, her hands at her sides. She had learned in years of field work that stillness was power. But stillness was also what predators mistook for weakness. Markson held up the small black pouch in the air, turning so the line of passengers could see. "She refused to say what's in it," he announced, loud enough for the curious to hear. "We may have a security threat here." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Naomi caught sight of a teenage boy whispering something to his mother, who quickly pulled him closer, their eyes fixed on her like she was some dangerous headline in the making. Naomi's voice was low, steady. "I never refused. You never asked." The blonde female officer, badge reading Reed, stepped forward, joining the show. "Ma'am, let's take this to secondary screening. It'll be easier for everyone." Ortiz stepped closer, his eyes flicking between Naomi and the pouch. "Markson," Ortiz said, "did her bag clear the X-ray?" Markson shifted. "It did, but what?" Ortiz's tone hardened. Markson leaned in, his voice dropping to a hiss only Ortiz and Naomi could hear. "She's hiding something. I can feel it. People like her?" He trailed off, glancing sideways. Naomi heard every word. "People like her." That was the tell. The quiet, coded phrase that stripped away the professionalism and exposed what this really was. They led her toward the glass-walled secondary inspection room, visible to the public but designed to isolate. Naomi walked with calm, measured steps, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She could feel the stares on her back, the silent judgment, the whispered suspicions. Inside, Reed closed the door while Markson unzipped the pouch. His eyebrows twitched the second he saw the weapon, a standard-issue Glock secured with a safety lock. Markson straightened, puffing up his chest. Well, this explains a lot. Naomi tilted her head. Go on. You can't bring a firearm into an airport without special clearance, Markson declared, clearly enjoying himself. Naomi let the silence stretch, then slid her hand into her blazer pocket. Slowly, deliberately, she placed a leather case on the table. It flipped open to reveal her FBI credentials, badge gleaming under the harsh light. Markson's smirk cracked. Reed's eyes widened. But Naomi didn't give them a chance to recover. You've just detained a federal agent without cause, she said, her voice sharp now, cutting through the air. And you did it after my bag cleared twice in full view of witnesses. Reed's mouth opened, closed. Markson's jaw worked like he was trying to find an escape route. Ortiz stepped in from the doorway, his face unreadable. Agent Carter, he said slowly, is there a reason your credentials weren't visible? They were, Naomi replied, eyes still locked on Markson. He just didn't bother to look. Ortiz's gaze shifted to Markson, the weight of silent authority pressing down. Markson swallowed hard, but Naomi could tell, the man still thought he could wiggle out of this. He still underestimated her. That was fine. Because she wasn't done. The small inspection room seemed to shrink as the silence stretched. Markson's confident stance had wilted slightly, his eyes darting anywhere but Naomi's badge. Reed shifted uncomfortably beside him, chewing her lip. Ortiz stood like a statue, his presence heavy. Naomi didn't move, didn't blink, didn't give them the release of speaking first. In the FBI, silence was a weapon. It forced people to fill it, usually with things they didn't intend to say. Markson finally spoke, his tone sharper now, defensive. Agent Carter, if you had just identified yourself at the start. I did, Naomi cut in, her voice precise. You looked past me. Twice. Markson opened his mouth again, but Naomi took one deliberate step forward, her heels clicking like a gavel striking wood. Let's get something straight, she said. You detained me in public view, performed an unnecessary search on cleared luggage, and attempted to handle a federal weapon without proper chain of custody protocol. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a violation. Reed's eyes flicked toward Markson, but the man kept his jaw clenched as if doubling down would save him. Ortiz finally broke the silence. Agent Carter, I'm sure this was just a... She turned to him, and the look in her eyes stopped him mid-sentence. Director Ortiz, she said, her voice still calm but edged with steel, how often do your officers pull aside travelers who've already cleared security? How often does random really mean random? Ortiz's Adam's apple bobbed. We follow protocol. Naomi tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Then let's follow it now. I want body cam footage, the checkpoint logs for the last 2 hours, and the incident record you're required to file anytime a federal agent is detained. Reed stiffened. Markson's gaze darted to Ortiz like a drowning man looking for a life preserver. Through the glass, Naomi could see the people who had witnessed her humiliation still gathered, some whispering, some filming with their phones. She didn't know whether they thought she was a criminal or just another security scare, but she knew the power of optics, and Markson's choice to make this a spectacle was about to boomerang. Ortiz followed her gaze, then stepped toward the door. Agent Carter, maybe we should resolve this out of public view. Naomi took a slow breath. Oh, now you want to hide it? No, she said firmly. We're going to finish exactly where it started. Out there. The tension was so thick Naomi could feel it pressing against her skin as they stepped out into the main terminal area. The hum of rolling suitcases, chatter, and boarding announcements returned, but Naomi felt every pair of eyes that turned toward them. Markson walked a half step ahead, shoulders squared as if trying to regain control of the narrative. Reed trailed behind, visibly uneasy. Naomi stopped just past the security lane and faced the cluster of travelers still watching. For those of you who saw what happened earlier, she said, her voice carrying clearly, I'd like to introduce myself properly. I'm Special Agent Naomi Carter with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. A ripple of surprise ran through the onlookers. A few gasps. Someone muttered, wait, she's FBI? Naomi didn't look at Markson directly, not yet. She let the weight of the revelation hang in the air, the dramatic irony sinking into the crowd. I was pulled aside today after clearing security twice. My bag was emptied in public. I was accused without evidence of hiding something. I want you to remember what you saw because accountability only happens when witnesses speak. Markson's neck flushed red. Ortiz's jaw tightened. Naomi finally turned toward Markson, meeting his eyes with steady precision. "Officer Markson, you seem very sure of your instincts. So tell me, what exactly about me said threat to you today?" Markson hesitated. His eyes flicked to the crowd, to Ortiz, then back to her. "Well, was it the way I walked? The color of my blazer? Or just the color of my skin?" The silence that followed was heavy. Reed looked down at the floor. Ortiz shifted uncomfortably. Naomi took a step closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear, but loud enough that the nearest passengers might catch pieces. "You made an assumption. And you acted on it without verifying. That's not security. That's bias. And it's dangerous." Ortiz cleared his throat. "Agent Carter, I'll personally ensure an internal review is conducted." Naomi's eyes stayed locked on Markson. "And I'll ensure the Department of Homeland Security's Civil Rights Division is copied on every word." Markson's smirk was gone. In its place was a flicker of something Naomi recognized instantly: fear. From the crowd, an older black woman stepped forward. Silver braids framed her face and she held her boarding pass like a shield. "I saw everything," she said, her voice strong. "And I've been pulled aside too. For no reason. You stand your ground, baby?" Her words broke the invisible dam. Others in the crowd began speaking up. Murmurs of agreement, nods, even a few applause. Naomi didn't smile, but she felt the shift. The balance of power in that terminal had just tilted, and it wasn't in Markson's favor anymore. Ortiz moved quickly now, ushering Naomi toward a private corridor, his voice low. "Agent Carter, let's get you to your gate." She followed, but her mind was already working. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Ortiz's shoes clicked fast against the polished floor as he led Naomi down the terminal's side corridor. The glass windows here didn't show planes or sky, only the sterile, fluorescent-lit guts of the airport. The crowd's noise faded behind them. "You don't have to go through with this here," Ortiz said, voice low. "You can file a complaint later, through official channels." Naomi kept pace, her stride measured. "And wait for it to get buried? No, we're doing it now." Ortiz sighed. "Agent Carter." She stopped walking. "Director Ortiz, I know how this works. A delay favors whoever made the mistake. And you're already trying to control damage, not truth." Ortiz didn't answer. That was enough confirmation. They reached a heavy steel door labeled Airport Security Operations. Inside, the air was cooler, the hum of machinery constant. Multiple monitors showed camera feeds from every checkpoint. A glass-walled conference room sat at the back. 2 airport police officers stood near the counter. One, a tall black man in his late 30s, dark blue uniform, crisp, short fade haircut, looked up as Naomi entered. His name tag read Henderson. His gaze flicked from Naomi to Ortiz, then to Markson and Reed, who had trailed reluctantly behind. Henderson's jaw set. "What's going on here?" he asked. Before Ortiz could answer, Naomi spoke. "I'm filing a formal bias and misconduct complaint. Right now." From the back room, a woman stepped out. Early 40s, Latina, tailored charcoal pantsuit over a light blue blouse. Her DHS lanyard swayed slightly as she moved. Hair pulled into a sleek shoulder-length bob, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the scene with quiet precision. "Lucia Ramirez," she introduced herself, her voice calm but commanding. "Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Division, Department of Homeland Security." Markson blinked. Reed straightened. Ortiz's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "I happen to be on site for a separate review," Lucia said. "But it looks like I've walked into something more pressing." Naomi stepped forward, extending her credentials. "Special Agent Naomi Carter, FBI. I was detained and searched without cause after clearing security twice. Witnesses are still at the checkpoint." Lucia's eyes sharpened. "Let's get to work." Lucia motioned Naomi into the glass conference room, Henderson following. Markson started to step in too, but Lucia stopped him at the door. "You'll have your turn," she said without looking at him. Inside, Naomi recounted everything from the moment she approached the checkpoint, tone steady, every detail crisp. Henderson quietly took notes, occasionally glancing up at her with something between respect and recognition. When Naomi finished, Lucia tapped her pen. "And your credentials were visible the whole time?" "They were clipped to my belt," Naomi said. "In plain sight." Lucia's jaw tightened. "All right. Let's hear from witnesses." Lucia brought in the older black woman from the checkpoint. Silver braids, church dress, wide-brimmed hat still in place. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, but her voice was steady. "I saw her bag go through the scanner twice just like mine. Nothing in it. Then that officer, the tall one with the sharp jaw, pulled her aside like she was trouble. "Did you hear why?" Lucia asked. The woman's mouth pressed thin. He said, "Random screening? But, honey, I've been traveling for years. I know what random really means sometimes." Henderson's pen slowed over the page. Next, the teenage boy Naomi had noticed earlier stepped in, his mother beside him. He shifted nervously in the chair. "She wasn't doing anything," he said quickly. "The officer didn't stop anybody else in front of her. Just her." His mother added, "I told him not to get involved, but," she glanced at Naomi, "I'm glad he spoke up." Finally, a white man in a pressed navy suit entered. He introduced himself as Daniel Price, a corporate attorney. His words came slow, deliberate. "I travel every week," he said. "I've seen enough checkpoints to know what fair looks like. This wasn't it. That officer didn't even glance at my bag. And mine had an unsealed water bottle." Lucia wrote something down with a sharp stroke. Lucia finally called Markson in. He entered with a forced calm, standing instead of sitting. "Officer Markson," she said, "walk me through your decision-making." "It was routine," he said flatly. "I noticed the passenger's bag looked unusually heavy for its size. I acted on instinct." Lucia's eyes narrowed. "Instinct? Did you review the X-ray results?" Markson hesitated. "They were clear, but you can't be too careful." 7 similar complaints in 2 years, Officer Markson," Lucia interrupted, tapping her clipboard. "All against travelers of color. All cleared of wrongdoing. Care to explain that pattern?" Markson's ears reddened. "I treat everyone the same." Naomi watched him, the corner of her mouth unmoving, but her eyes sharp as glass. When Markson left, Lucia leaned back in her chair. "This isn't the first time I've seen his name in a file," she said. "And it won't disappear just because it happened to an FBI agent this time." Henderson looked at Naomi. "You want me to walk you to your gate after this?" Naomi nodded once. "Thanks. But first, Ortiz." Ortiz stepped in, his tie slightly askew. "Agent Carter, I hope you understand." "I understand," Naomi said, cutting him off. "I understand that you have a pattern of officer behavior here that's going to bring your whole operation under review." Ortiz's face flushed. "That's not necessary." "It is," Lucia said smoothly, closing her folder. "Because if you'd addressed this the first few times it happened, we wouldn't be sitting here now." As Ortiz's protests faded in the background, Naomi's mind drifted, unbidden, to her first year at Quantico. She had been a trainee then, nervous but eager, when a security guard at a courthouse stopped her at the door. "Delivery's in the back," he'd said without even checking her ID. She'd walked past that man hours later after winning her first mock trial exercise, but the sting of that day never left her. It was the same sting she felt now. Back in the present, Lucia closed the conference room door. "I'm launching a formal investigation effective immediately," she said. "Markson will be placed on suspension. Reed will undergo mandatory retraining. Ortiz, you'll submit full cooperation or we escalate to federal oversight." Ortiz's lips pressed into a line, but he didn't argue. Lucia looked at Naomi. "We're not done here. And you, Officer Markson," she added toward the hallway where he lingered, "are going to wish this had been random." Henderson escorted Naomi out toward her gate. As they passed through the terminal again, some of the same onlookers from before were still there. The older woman gave a small nod, the teenage boy waved. Naomi's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. She answered. "Agent Carter?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Carla Jennings from Channel 7 News. We have a developing story about an FBI agent being profiled at an airport this morning. We believe that agent is you." Naomi stopped walking. Henderson raised an eyebrow. "Yes," Naomi said slowly. "It's me." Carla's voice sharpened. "Can we talk? On camera?" Naomi's eyes swept the terminal, the cameras, the faces, the tension still hanging in the air. And she knew, the fight had just gone public. Naomi stood in the middle of the terminal, the hum of boarding announcements in the background, Carla Jennings' voice still in her ear. "On camera?" Naomi repeated slowly, weighing the moment. If she stepped in front of a lens now, the story would no longer belong to airport security. It wouldn't be a quiet file in DHS archives. It would be national and messy. She glanced at Officer Henderson, who was standing a respectful few feet away. "Your call," he said simply. "But I've seen these things vanish when nobody's watching." Naomi took a slow breath. "Carla, I'll meet you in the arrivals hall in 15 minutes. Bring your crew." "You're sure?" Carla asked. I'm sure, Naomi replied, ending the call. Henderson gave her a look somewhere between respect and warning. Once it's out there, there's no walking it back. That's the point, Naomi said. They passed through the terminal, Naomi's badge visible against her blazer. A few passengers recognized her from earlier. Some nodded quietly, others whispered to companions. The older woman with silver braids raised a hand in a slow, proud wave. By the time they reached the arrivals hall, Carla Jennings and her cameraman were already set up. Carla was a tall woman in a dark blazer, hair styled into perfect waves, eyes sharp but inviting. Agent Carter, she greeted, extending her hand. Thank you for trusting me with this. I'm not trusting you, Naomi said, her tone matter-of-fact. I'm trusting the public. The camera light blinked on. Carla began, voice steady for the recording. We're here live at Bayport International Airport, where this morning an FBI special agent was allegedly profiled and detained by TSA officers without cause. Agent Carter, can you tell us what happened? Naomi didn't sugarcoat it. She laid out each step. The initial pass through security, the false random search, the public bag check, the discovery of her service weapon, and finally the reveal of her badge. Carla leaned forward slightly. And you believe you were targeted because I'm a black woman? Naomi said, not flinching. I've been in law enforcement for over a decade. I know what a security protocol looks like and I know what bias looks like. This was the latter, wrapped in the language of the former. Within minutes of the interview airing live, Naomi's phone buzzed non-stop. Text messages from colleagues, missed calls from her FBI supervisor, emails from advocacy groups. Henderson glanced at the screen of his own phone. You're trending, he said, half smiling. But not everyone was smiling. Ortiz appeared in the far corner of the arrivals hall, speaking urgently into his phone, eyes locked on Naomi. Even at a distance, his discomfort was obvious. Lucia Ramirez arrived 20 minutes later, her DHS lanyard catching the light. She stepped up to the cameras without hesitation. For the record, Lucia said to Carla's microphone, the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Division has opened a formal investigation into this incident. Officer Markson is currently on administrative leave. Officer Reed will undergo retraining. We take bias in security enforcement very seriously and no one is above accountability. Markson, standing far behind them, shifted his weight and looked down at the floor. He'd been ordered to stay in the area for questioning, but his former confidence was gone. Later that afternoon, Lucia confirmed something Naomi had suspected. DHS had uncovered 7 previous complaints against Markson for targeting travelers of color, all dismissed by Ortiz's office with insufficient evidence. Carla's cameraman caught Naomi's reaction on film, a slow, incredulous shake of the head. How does a man keep his badge after 7 complaints? Naomi asked aloud, not to anyone in particular. Lucia's eyes hardened. Because no one with the power to stop him wanted to admit it was happening. Carla's segment aired again that evening, now expanded with passenger interviews. The older black woman spoke passionately. I've been traveling for decades and I've been pulled aside more times than I can count. Always told it's random. I know better. What happened to her happens to us all the time. The only difference is she had a badge to prove who she was. Daniel Price, the businessman, admitted on camera that his own bag had passed without scrutiny. I had an open bottle of water and a metal pen that should have been checked, he said. They waved me through. No questions. Within 48 hours, DHS formally recommended Markson's termination. Ortiz received a formal reprimand for failure to address prior complaints and was temporarily reassigned. Reed avoided suspension but was ordered into an intensive bias and cultural competency program. Naomi didn't gloat. That wasn't her style. She knew bias wasn't a single bad actor. It was a system, and the system had to be dragged into the light piece by piece. When Naomi returned to her field office, her supervisor, Special Agent Morgan, was waiting. You made waves, he said, leaning against the doorway of her office. Good, Naomi replied. Waves reached the shore. Morgan gave a faint smile. Just be ready for the pushback. People in the system don't like being called out, especially not on live TV. I've been ready for years, Naomi said. 2 weeks later, Naomi received a handwritten letter at her office. The return address was from a neighborhood in Detroit. Dear Agent Carter, I saw your story on the news. My grandson was pulled aside at an airport last year for no reason. They scared him so bad he doesn't want to fly anymore. But when he saw you on TV, he said, she looks like us. He said maybe one day he could be like you. Thank you for standing up, not just for yourself, but for all of us. Mrs. E. Thompson. Naomi read the letter twice, then tucked it into her desk drawer. Some victories weren't about headlines, they were about moments like this. A month later, Naomi was back at Bayport International for an unrelated case. As she walked toward the gates, she noticed Henderson on duty. He spotted her and gave a small nod. Then she saw Reed working at the far end of the checkpoint. This time, Reed looked up, met her eyes, and gave a quick, respectful nod. No words exchanged, but the message was clear. That evening, Naomi boarded her flight, watching the tarmac through the oval window. She thought of all the people who never got the chance to speak up, all the ones whose stories ended in silence instead of resolution. Justice, she knew, wasn't always about punishing the guilty. Sometimes, it was about making sure the next person walked through that line without fear. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and let the plane's engines drown out the noise of the past month. For now, this battle was won. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing about bias is not the act itself, but the silence that follows it. Naomi Carter could have walked away that day, let it be another invisible incident swept under the rug. Instead, she chose the harder path, standing her ground in public against the weight of the system. And because she did, one officer lost the power to repeat the harm, and countless travelers gained the power to be seen. In a world where silence protects the wrong, speaking up will always be the loudest weapon. If this story had your heart racing, imagine how many untold stories like Naomi's happen every single day. Stories where dignity is tested, where the underestimated rise and prove everyone wrong. That's why we share them here, to shine a light, to speak truth, and to remind the world, never judge a book by its cover. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss these powerful real-life battles for justice. We're building a community that refuses to stay silent. Speech balloon now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been judged or treated unfairly just because of the way you look, and later proved your doubters completely wrong? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might just be the voice someone else needs to hear today.